So what are the high yield areas? What are the key focus areas for each chapter? This is what I'm going to discuss in today's video. So stay tuned till the end, children. This will definitely help you in your preparation. Hi guys, welcome to my channel. In this video I'm going to share with you the 20-day plan for April JEE 2021, and this will surely help you for your May preparation as well. So the main points that you have to keep in mind: 25 questions, one on an average per chapter, with some chapters having a higher probability of a question being asked in comparison to others. But some questions are going to have multiple concepts, that is concepts from various chapters combined together to build up a question. Now is the time to do a very crisp, sharp preparation the last 20 days. So I'm sharing with you the last 20-day strategy. Let us begin. Okay, so let us discuss about this 20-day plan in detail. What all things you can focus more on. So I have written here the physical chapters. These are total of 12 chapters for both the classes 11th and 12th, plus one chapter nuclear chemistry, which is not a part of the present NCERT as such, but questions related to this are a part of atomic structure as well as chemical kinetics. This used to be a part of the old syllabus. So some questions related to this are also asked. So that makes the total chapters 12 plus 1. Right? Now, I have differentiated the 11th class chapters here and 12th here. To begin with, children, I would like to comment, when you prepare physical chemistry, the greater focus is on your calculations, practice and accuracy. So first step is you need to be good at calculations, some approximations while calculating. Then you have to maintain accuracy, achieve accuracy, which will come with practice. And once these three components are covered, then you have to work on improving time. So I would suggest whenever you do practice from questions, from question bank or from any your tuition modules or anything that you're working on, please do not flip the pages and practice like novel reading. Your practice should be with paper and pen every time solving the questions. And say you want to do 45 questions of a particular topic, do not keep comparing and looking at the answer after solving every question, or simply looking at the solution question wise and thinking, ha, ye to ho jayega, this I can do, this I can manage, and simply flipping pages. Children, trust me, that is of no use. You will not be able to build up on your score by doing this kind of practice. You're basically fooling yourself. Okay, so this has to be a paper and pen practice done properly by setting a time. Say 45 questions, you set your timer to 1 hour, do all the questions, whether you can attempt or you cannot attempt. The ones you cannot attempt, leave them, do not check them side by side. Okay, now this is how your basic practice should be done. After you've done all the questions, check, compare, look for your doubts, look for solutions, work on those, and then highlight in every test, highlight those questions that you could not do on your own in the first go, in the first attempt, so that whenever you're doing a second revision, you just keep circling those. Okay, revise those topics, and the ones which you could conveniently attempt in your first go, you would not need a redo of those questions. Now, just talking about the chapters, and I'm mainly focusing on the topics, the questions of each of these chapters that JEE Mains this year, that is 2021 and also 2020, had focused on. So Mohr concept, although children, I cannot, no one can basically guess what can be asked and what cannot be asked, but there are some high yield topics that we generally expect, and this guesswork is never for the toppers, the ones who are aiming very high ranks, because by now they are already prepared. They also have a strategy to work on. Such kind of classes, such kind of lectures are of little use to them. But the ones who are right now in just working on a plan to improve their score in the last 20 days, because their preparation till date is not that confident or they are confused, So I am commenting on some high yield topics that they can be covering. So please listen to this with patience. It will definitely be of help to you for your attempt, and see till the end. I'll be commenting on all physical, inorganic and organic chapters. So without wasting any time, quickly going through Mohr concept, the major topics that have been focused on this year were stoichiometry questions, that is questions based on balanced chemical equations related to percentage purity, then concentration terms that such as molarity, mole fraction, etc. And most of the questions had concepts linked between different chapters. Like if there is a question based on calculations, mole calculations, it includes the concept of solutions chapter, it includes the concepts of redox chapter, and then this year particularly I observed that a number of reactions of organic were converted into mole concept kind of questions, like complete a reaction or a reaction is given, an organic reaction, and you're asked to work on some percentage yield or how much of product will be formed, these kind of concepts. So mostly I would say the concepts were related to NCERT. No need to go to and beyond NCERT concepts, like all the extra topics that we do in coaching. So you can just focus for JEE Mains on the basic topics like concentration terms, percentage purity, some questions on hardness. Hardness is a part of hydrogen chapter also. So questions related to NCERT, but a lot of practice so that you attain accuracy. Structure of atom, the high yield questions were based on Bohr model, hydrogen spectrum, photoelectric effect, de Broglie, Heisenberg's, and then quantum mechanics is as always has a major contribution in this chapter when questions are asked. So many questions on magnetic moment, finding out magnetic moment based on unpaired electrons, then questions on hydrogen spectrum, the Lyman-Balmer series, then questions on nodes, radial nodes, angular nodes, how to calculate nodes. These are all very basic questions, all related to NCERT, but then you need to be accurate in your attempts. Orbitals and electronic configuration, the radial probability distribution curves, and comparison of some radii. So that's comparison of radii is a part of both atomic structure. It comes as a part of bonding in a different way, and then periodic classification in a different way. Okay, radii, everything related to atomic radii, calculation of radii, comparison of radii, quantitatively as well as qualitatively. Qualitatively means which of the following will be more will have higher radius or smaller radius, and quantitatively means calculating the radii or calculating the ratio of radii of various orbitals. Then we have an extremely high yield topic, that is chemical bonding. This is an ever favorite with competitive exams, whether it's JEE or NEET. So, and children, if you just want to do selective topics, I would suggest just work on all possible structures, any structure that is mentioned in NCERT, in the table of NCERT, in the content of NCERT, all the structures related to Weisser, then VBT, that is valence bond theory, and MOT, hybridization, all these concept related structures, and those structures which are a part of P block and D block, like all the oxy acids of phosphorus, halogens, etc. All those structures. So those structures and related hybridizations and lone pairs and bond pairs, such kind of questions are very important. Then potential energy curve, bond characteristics. Bond characteristics means bond angle comparisons, bond order, bond strength, magnetic character, an ever favorite topic, calculating magnetic moment, magnetic character, right? And in the previous years, topics like Fajan's rule, etc. also have been important, but this year greater focus has been observed on these topics, right? And please, you can avoid, if like right now you have less time, so you can always avoid those extreme topics like Drago's rule and Ben's rule, and all those things can be right now avoided, and you can focus more on the basics. So gaseous state, more focus was on intermolecular forces, and in general, if I speak, then intermolecular forces is a very important topic, then laws and van der Waals equation. So questions related to mainly these topics. I am again repeating, for the ones who are aiming very high, Nothing can be left to chance. The entire chapter should be done thoroughly with a quick revision, because they are expected to have prepared by now quite well. So this analysis is more for children who are struggling till date. Now, redox reactions, more focus on oxidizing reducing agent identification. An equation is given, identify oxidizing and reducing agents, then calculation of oxidation numbers, balancing of redox reactions. A redox reaction is given with A, B, C as the coefficients written, and you're supposed to calculate those coefficients. And then you can also balance these redox reactions, children, by the shortcut methods, the n factor method, which you must have done at your coaching, and then questions based on titrations. Now, questions based on titrations can be qualitative or they can be numerical based. So when they are numerical based, they become a part of mole concept as well as redox. So these topics you should focus when preparing redox. Thermodynamics, this year it was observed more questions were from thermochemistry and less for thermodynamics. Now, thermochemistry means questions based on the various kinds of heats, heat of formation, and delta G, delta H, delta S comparisons, the Gibbs energy equation, all those questions were more often asked, and lesser questions were observed from topics like work done or CPCV, that is thermodynamics, right? So equilibrium, otherwise also thermochemistry, it's easier to work on. These children generally have more confusion in the thermodynamics part. So in case dynamics part is not very strong, now you can focus more on thermochemistry in these last few days, so that you can easily attempt the easier questions. Now, equilibrium, in the previous years there used to be high yield questions from chemical equilibrium, but recently in the last 2 years I've observed more questions have been asked from ionic equilibrium than chemical equilibrium. And ionic equilibrium is basically a chapter which needs a lot of practice. So if this chapter is not very strong with you, then I would suggest that you just work on the basic questions from equilibrium. Like you can work on the Lewis acid base characters, the Arrhenius concept, then you can work on solubility product, that's one easy topic, pH, all the basic components, what are buffers, identification of buffers, what is a hydrolysis product. You can focus on these points in case this chapter and the numerical part is not very strong. You can just work on the easier concept based topics, so that you have a chance of scoring at least somewhat if these chapters are asked. Now, solid state, comparatively less questions have been asked from this chapter. In general, children, if I look at the entire analysis, questions have been asked from all the chapters, like on an average 1 question per chapter. Since we have 25 questions this year, so some questions have a combination of more than one chapter, more than one concept. So as such, we cannot leave anything, but this chapter is not a high yield chapter. So in case you're not very strong with the numerical part, you can at least go through the basics of voids, the BCC, FCC, some basic concepts, right? So that you can at least attempt the qualitative questions. And then questions related to density are important. And HCP has always been a favorite with entrance exams. HCP is not a very highlighted topic when it comes to boards, but for competitive, for JEE and NEET, you must work on HCP as well. Now, solutions chapter, more focus has been on colligative properties and Van 't Hoff factor. And of course, concentration terms, which can be included either in this first chapter, or you can consider it to be a part of this, because all molality, etc. are a part of both the chapters as well as redox. So a combination of these 3 topics comes under this concentration terms, and colligative properties are an ever important topic, right? Chemical kinetics, again less questions have been observed. This chapter is easy to prepare. Mostly questions related to half-life and activation energy are important. So you can go through the easier ones. This chapter is basically less time input, and I wouldn't say this is a very high yield chapter. This is an easy chapter. So if you are very strong with this chapter, you can revise these topics, right? Electrochemistry, more of the questions from electrochemical cells this year, less from electrolytic. but earlier years, like even electrolysis questions have been asked commonly. So can't accurately make a guess, but I would say like this year, this and the last year, it was observed questions based on conductance, then Colroche law, and then electrolysis, Faraday's law. Very simple basic questions like how many Faraday are required for a particular conversion. So such kind of questions you can answer easily, even if your redox is very strong. Your N factors, your redox, your oxidation states, these concepts are strong. You'll be able to manage questions based on this as well. Surface chemistry, mainly NCERT. I would suggest surface chemistry, just focus on NCERT. Basically 99% of the JEE mains paper can be attempted very conveniently if your NCERT concepts are strong, right? And from this chapter, I would suggest the questions related to charges, the Hardy-Schulze rule, charges on colloidal particles. These questions you should focus on, and then questions on the table, classification of colloidal solutions. That is, they'll give you a particular solution and ask which is the dispersion medium, or which is the dispersed state, or solid and liquid kind of. Now such kind of questions have always been important in the previous years. And then a few questions from enzymes topic. Nuclear chemistry, basically questions related to radioactivity, which can be considered as a part of atomic structure as well as a part of kinetics, right? Since radioactivity obeys first order kinetics, and then all those alpha, beta, gamma rays you study in atomic structure, both in chemistry as well as physics. So that much part you can do in order to cover this component. So this was about physical chemistry. Now let us work on the requirements for inorganic chemistry. Now for inorganic chemistry, you need more of learning as well as repeat learning. Now why do I say repeat learning? Because this is more of fact based, learning based. Of course there's a lot of logic also, but then there are a lot of facts. So you would need a repeat learning. So I would say you can just give it one learning in the beginning, and then must revise it in the last 2 days, must revise the highlighted points in the last 2 days, so that you remember the facts. So here one of the very important chapters is periodic classification, D and F, coordination. These are extremely high yield. So if I look at the length of these chapters and the importance, like the ratio is in comparison to the content volume, the importance is higher. Like high yield questions are asked from these topics. So for periodic, what was observed this year, questions were more focused on ionization energy, electron gain enthalpy, bond dissociation energy. So I would suggest you focus on these topics more, and also work on all the exceptions and orders. And I would suggest exceptions related to, again, NCERT and NCERT tables. Hydrogen chapter is purely NCERT. Just go through NCERT thoroughly for hydrogen chapter. More learning is involved here, and the topics that were observed this year and are always important are hardness and hydrogen peroxide. Hardness, everything about the various processes, temporary, permanent hardness, how to remove, which method, what reagents. Hydrogen peroxide, reactions, volume strength questions, then like acting as an oxidizing or a reducing agent in alkaline or in acidic, and which reagents in acidic, which in alkaline. That component, that part, if you can do, and that part I would suggest do from NCERT, and you can even elaborate a little from your reference books or your tuition modules. Now S block this year, more questions have been observed based on uses related to S block and processes. Fine, this is partly an extension of periodic. All the concept based questions here are covered in periodic as well. Topics like diagonal relationship, anomalous properties, this is a part of periodic as well. Topics like uses, which are given at the end of the chapter in the form of different compounds. So I would suggest go through that. This is purely learning based. Go through NCERT, but important. right? It's not always possible to differentiate a question whether it was asked from periodic or S block, because these are quite related topics. And then P block, group 13 and 14, I would suggest boron, aluminium, carbon, important uses, processes, and some important structural components. You can revise, again NCERT based. Metallurgy is a class 12 chapter, which again should be focused on NCERT and slightly around the boundaries of NCERT. A little if you can extend, but in case your preparation is not very good, just go through metallurgy thoroughly from NCERT itself. The topics that you should focus more on ores, because this has always been a high yield topic. Like every year, at least one question has been observed in every block regarding ores. So please learn the ores. AIIMS diagrams, graph based questions, which one can oxidize or reduce, or which component can react with the other. So all the principles of AIIMS as well as examples and everything specifically quoted in NCERT with understanding. Then principles of various processes in NCERT, like zone refining, Mohr's process, etc. All the processes that you study, the basic outline of metallurgical operation, and every process that we use in the stages, just do the principles involved. Then we have P block. Mostly group 15 dominates in the questions in the last 2 years, this year as well as last. There are questions from other groups also, but I've observed that group 15 was like the dominating part. So again, this topic is quite voluminous, more time input required, but questions asked are generally those high yield questions which you are taught in your tuitions or during your classes. Questions that teachers generally tell you are important, those questions are asked. Fine. So you can just work on those questions that you've prepared for boards as well. Structure based questions, equation based questions, important equations. So do those high yield topics. D and F block, again similarly, NCERT, KMNO4 dichromate, lanthanoid contraction. These are the high yield topics, and this is not very voluminous, more learning based, but then you can grab questions from this more conveniently. Coordination chapter, children, is a very high yield chapter, and what I have observed is most questions were again related to magnetic moment of complexes, para, dia, calculate magnetic moment, structures, hybridization, and isomerism. Isomerism has always been a favorite topic when it comes to inorganic chemistry. So do this well. Although these topics have been this year, for this particular year, they have been deleted from NCERT, the board syllabus, but for entrance exams, all this is important. So if you can just focus on these questions and these topics in the last few days, it's not that these have been asked in the 2021 and 2020. They are in general also important topics. So if you want to work more on the guesswork or more on reinforcing certain topics during the last days, then you must focus on these particular topics, right? So we move on to working on organic, talking of organic chemistry. Now when it comes to organic chemistry, we have a total of 10 chapters for 11th and 12th combined. So organic chemistry, more in general, your learning should be based on practice of the reagents through conversions, linking up of the various reagents that you learn through practice of conversions, mechanisms, and for all this you can make use of the appendix which is given at the end of almost every reference book. You might have been provided notes through your coaching, or use any reference book like Pradeep's or Modern's, or any other, basically any reference book that you've been using throughout the year. At the end there are appendices given. Now there's one appendix which deals with name reactions, another appendix which deals with conversions, and there's another appendix which deals with distinction tests. That brilliantly covers, children, a lot of your content that you need to be knowing at the basic level for your JEE attempt. Clear? So this is one aspect of your preparation. You can use the learning, you can summarize the learning basically by practice through these topics. Then we have for 11th topics GOC. You know, this is an ever important, a base forming topic. If your GOC is not strong, your understanding of rest of the topics is also not strong. So what are the key areas that you need to work on, and on which questions this year have been asked? Isomerism, acidic basic character, like which H is acidic and which compound is more basic or less basic, these kind of questions. Hybridization of carbons, just the first 2-3 pages of your NCERT book covers these topics, like find out hybridization of a particular carbon in an organic compound, right? That is very important. Then IUPAC nomenclature, IUPAC name, almost every year there is definitely a question from IUPAC, the previous years as well as this year. Aromaticity, very important. Chirality and intermediates, comparison of stabilities based on effects. So these are the more important topics that you should be highlighting, right? Hydrocarbons, children, all the mechanisms like Markovnikov's rule, anti-Markovnikov's rule, the mechanisms of reactions, mechanism-based questions, mechanism-based explanations of the topics of NCERT, I would suggest, right? Purification is very important this year specifically, and with every passing year more questions are included in practical organic chemistry, and most of the questions which have been asked in practical organic chemistry, they have been catered to in NCERT chapters purification part. So must do this very well. This is a very, very strongly I would suggest that you must focus on this chapter purification. If you cannot do much, purification of NCERT, must learn the reagents, the principles thoroughly. Purification, then distinctions, like how to distinguish between an alkane and alkene, or alkene and alkyne, or terminal alkynes and non-terminal alkynes, etc. Then stabilities based on heat of combustion, heat of hydrogenations, heat of formation, etc. Then HBO, ozonolysis, Lindlar's, these are just, I'm naming a few reactions. So all these high yield reactions, and of course aromatic compounds, aromaticity, aromatic compounds, EAS, the electrophilic aromatic substitution, these are all very, very important topics that you must go through, the types of reactions. Environmental chemistry is learning based, just NCERT, and if you just learn NCERT, it's learning based chapter, one question can be grabbed, because often a question is asked from this chapter, quite often. Fine. Then we have alkylides, all the mechanism based questions, the nucleophilic substitutions, SN1, SN2, SNAR, EAS. Sometimes NGP kind of questions have been asked, but this year more of basic questions were observed. So these topics, alcohols, phenols, you have Grignard reagent, Lucas, CAN, acidic ammonium nitrate, questions related to analysis and distinction, reagents, then all the name reactions, acidity of phenols. EAS is an important topic under all these functional groups. Electrophilic aromatic substitution, what kind of influence each group is going to have on these reactions. And yes, glycol and glycerol, which is not a part of NCERT, I would suggest you must go through this also. You must have done this at your coaching. Glycol and glycerol are also important topics. They have been asked this year as well. Aldehydes, ketones and acids, we have the reagents again, Tollens, Fellings, Benedict's, ever important. Then some questions based on percentage yield based on reaction. As I shared with you, mole concept chapter, questions based on stoichiometry have been combined with some organic reactions and asked, right? So that for that you need not do any specific preparation. If your mole is strong and your reagents and your reactions are strong, your basic understanding is strong, you'll be able to work. Yes, of course you need more expertise, more practice of calculations also. Then we have aldol and canizero, ever important. Oxidizing agents, reducing agents, ever important. Then children, we have these compounds. When I teach my students, I always insist to learn certain common names, and this year there was a question, mesetyl oxide 4-on, give the IUPAC name. So I strongly insist again, your common names also should be very good, specifically the ones given in NCERT questions, either directly related to give IUPAC name of a common name, or questions in which they are going to ask you a question based on a common name. So please do not ignore this, to revise all this well. Then we have NCERT reagents. In general, you should know all the reagents and then practice those reagents through conversions. Amines, basic nature, ever important for boards, for JEE, for NEET, every kind of exam. Name reactions, Hinsberg reagent, distinctions, Hoffman bromamide, ammonolysis, carbylamine, etc. I'm just naming a few. Gabriel phthalimide, etc. All the name reactions you should be knowing. That is important. Okay, now these are the last 3 chapters: biomolecules, chemistry in everyday life, and polymers. These chapters are, again, I would suggest just focus on NCERT. This is more learning based, but more critical questions have been asked, like you cannot do superficial learning. You need to be knowing structural aspects. You need to be knowing about amino acids, the amino acid table. So you need to be knowing this more critically to be able to attempt all the questions. So if you've not done this chapter, I think doing this chapter really helps you gather marks if these chapters are done well, because there's not much of an application in this, right? Much of your intelligence or application or practice is not going to affect your score. The more important component that is needed is learning and retaining the concepts, right? And anything, children, that you've not touched throughout the year, any topics that you've not touched throughout the year, this is not the right time to do any such thing now. Leave those topics which you've not done throughout the year. Focus on your strong points. Purpose is to grab marks. Okay? And anything that you do now, you might end up learning it well, but retaining it and then applying it during the exams might not be that easy. So you'll be wasting your time in preparing those particular components. Very strictly, do not do anything new. Absolutely nothing new during these 20 days. Just focus on gathering all that you already have in your hands. Okay, all the chapters that you're already good at, work on those. And I have shared these topics with you, so you can work more on these topics in case your preparation is not that confident. You can focus on these topics per chapter and just make a plan so that you complete your syllabus well on time, and leave the last 3-4 days for a re-review, like going through the formulas and of all the subjects, basically chemistry, physics, maths, going through the formulas and just reviewing everything again, because what you do now in the early days, you might not remember it that well at the end. So last 3, 4, 5 days, depending upon your preparation, you should be leaving for a re-reviewing. Okay, plus every alternate day you should definitely attempt a mock test. Every alternate day attempt a mock test, and that mock test should be attempted during the time slot you're actually going to appear for your exam. Please attempt that mock test at the time where you are actually going to sit for your exam. This is called setting the body clock, right? Your mind gets set into that form. So I'll be making a separate video on all such components, how to prepare yourself for attempting the exam immediately before the exam. So right now, please go through this carefully and stay and do not check up many videos on the net. Instead, focus more on studying, children. This is the time to study, work hard, and be confident. Whatever your level, your plan should be to upgrade yourself from that level. Clear? So may God bless you all. You can like, subscribe for more such videos. And I sometimes do not manage the schedule, like I generally have to post on Wednesday and Fridays, but today I'm posting it on Monday. Sometimes I am not able to manage according to that schedule. I've just started with this, so I hope you forgive me for that. Please stay strong, stay tough, stay composed. Whatever your level is, give it your best shot in these last days. All the best, children. God bless you. Basically, every child is different, so you all have a different level of preparation till date. And the ones who are aiming for top ranks and the ones who are already prepared well, for them this will just help in reinforcing those topics that you've already done. The ones who have not been able to do that well, are not very confident, can work on these specific topics and give it your best shot So wherever you are presently, whatever level you are at, you can come far above that particular level, right? So even every one question that you attempt correctly or incorrectly is going to make a big difference to your total ranks, children. And you know, just a percentile of nearly 0.1% is going to cost you somewhere around 1000 ranks. And as we go further towards the lower percentiles, each 0.1 percentile is going to cost you more ranks, maybe 2000, 3000, and so on, right? So it's very important to be very critical in your preparation. Whatever you've done for these 2 years, now is the time to do a very crisp, sharp preparation the last 20 days.